I've known John for just a little over a year. Where do I start? My husband.
Gloria.
What's that? Gloria. My husband and I, well, we've been married for 26 years. We met in high school. And, you know, life was going along peachy fine. We had a little white picket fence and 2 young boys, and life was good. And about 10 years ago, probably, actually, when I think back, it's been more than 10 years, probably maybe 13 years, he kind of wasn't himself. He was starting to feel sad, but didn't really know what it was. And he was also waking up pretty much every weekend with a migraine and suffering from a lot of headaches. And one day I just remember kind of sitting in our bathroom, and I looked at him and I said, you know, maybe you have depression, maybe you're depressed. And he was like, you know, no. And anyway, he started seeking, you know, medical attention, went to the doctors, and eventually he was put on an antidepressant because he was diagnosed with depression. And that's kind of where our story started, but it really ended up being 10 years of a living hell. His depression was very, very severe. He had been working in Toronto for commuting from Kitchener to Toronto. It's about an hour drive. He had been commuting for about 22 years, but the commute just got to be too difficult as he was suffering with the depression, and he found that he could no longer drive. So his boss was a very kind man and knew us very well. Rob had worked with him for, as I said, for 22 years. So he went down to a 4-day work week and kind of handled this for a year. And then after the year, he ended up having a mini breakdown in his boss's office, and his boss said, you know, just take time off, take whatever you need, you know, you've always got a job here for you. So we were at least thankful for that. You know, we didn't have to worry about, you know, him not having a job. And he ended up being off for an entire year. And after that year, he just found that he actually couldn't even go back to work because he was so sick. He laid on the couch most days and really didn't do anything. And our kids were very young. This is really a good story in the end, but it was very hard to talk about. So our kids were about 10 and 12 at the time, and I just remember thinking, how am I going to do this? Because there's days when I wanted to say to him, you know, you just need to maybe pull up your socks and just get off the couch and get a move on. Because I've never dealt with depression, so I didn't know what it was like. And maybe there's some of us who are out there who have felt that way about people, but I've learned since that it's not that easy, and that's not really how it works. And so I remember going to my pastor at the time. We were attending a Baptist church, and I was raised Lutheran, and we now go to sort of a non-denominational sort of Pentecostal base, so maybe I'm triple-minded, not double-minded like John was. But anyways, so I had gone to our pastor just to talk to him about what was happening in our home, and, you know, how was I going to deal with this. And so he had just said to me, you know, Renata, you're going to have to just decide to kind of lock that door and decide whether you're in this or not. And then he kind of said something to me that I'll never forget. He said, if your husband was in a wheelchair, he said, would you tell him to just get up and walk? And I kind of sat there and I said, well, I guess not. And he said, so you're going to have to learn how to, you know, you're not going to be able to change your husband, but you're going to have to learn how to change yourself so that you can live with him. And so over the years, you know, I've grown a lot as well, because I've had to change and learn how to love somebody who at times was very unlovable. And so God also did a work on my heart, because I had to learn to love my husband when it was very difficult, because he often wasn't there for any of us. And I felt like I was a single parent many days. Our house was very chaotic, and it was not a nice place to be. And often our younger son, who seemed to have life together, you know, I would try to sort of shield him from what was going on. So I'd have him stay at my mom and dad's house, or you know, out of friends, just to kind of keep him away from what was going on. There's times when, you know, I would send my husband to, my brother lived 3 hours away, so I would have him go there for a couple of weeks so that I could deal with my son. and my husband wouldn't have to witness what my son was doing, because you can imagine someone that's depressed and already can't deal with life, that he wouldn't have to deal with all the things that my son was going through, our son, sorry. So, anyways, this went on for a very long time, and my husband was suicidal. You know, there were times when I had to call the police because he would phone me. He was on the road driving, and he said that he felt like driving into a car. Someone told him to drive into a car. Or he'd be walking along, and there was a bridge, and he said he felt like jumping off. And I'd be on the phone with him, and, you know, begging him not to do that, because that's not what God wanted him to do. And there came a time when, you know, I realized that this really wasn't God's plan for my husband's life. And I had prayed a lot for him, and we always went to church, and, you know, I had lots of people praying for him. And he went up for prayer quite often, almost every Sunday when we were at church. He went up for prayer. Wherever there was any healing opportunity, we ran to it. Friends would call us and say, hey, there's a minister coming who does healing. He has a healing ministry. So we'd go, and, you know, he'd line up and they'd start to pray over him. But he was never healed, and that can become very discouraging for someone, you know. Every day he'd go home, well, there's another one. I guess God doesn't want to heal me. He goes, you know, he would say, I must be a really bad sinner. That's often what he thought. And I never really understood why either, but I just always kept believing. In my heart, I always knew that he would be healed. I always believed that. I wouldn't let go of that, because I would accept nothing less. I thought, God, this is not the life that you want for us. And I'm just not going to accept that. And we tried everything. He tried every medication that available. He was seeing a psychiatrist in London at the time who was actually a Christian. And he basically went through the entire list where we got to the point where the psychiatrist said, there's really not much else that I can offer you. But interestingly, 5 years before my husband was healed, the psychiatrist had said to my husband that he believed that it was a spiritual thing that my husband was experiencing, and that medication would really fix him anyways. And so that kind of always stuck to me. But again, in the back of my head, I thought, well, yeah, you know, how come nothing's working then? And we had also gone to other deliverances. We even drove to Buffalo one time. A friend had told us about a church that does a lot of deliverance, so we went there, and the pastor did a bit of a sermon, and then there were lots of people, you know, they passed bags around, and everybody was, you know, all puking and whatnot. My husband just standing there, nothing's happening to him, and I'm like, I can't believe this, nothing happened again. I'm like, what's with this man? You know, and I mean, there were days, so we walked away from there again very disappointed and discouraged because nothing happened again. And as I said, as far as the secular system, he had tried everything, every medication. He even ended up, maybe a couple of years before he was healed, before he had deliverance with John, or I think it was even the year before, he actually had ECT done, electric shock therapy, which I highly discourage if anybody ever considers it. You know, we were told all kinds of things. There might be some slight short-term memory loss, but it was a nightmare. We woke up one morning, and I had asked my son to take my son's coat to, so I keep saying my son, our son's coat to the dry cleaners, and he said, the dry cleaners? Where's the dry cleaners? It's 5 minutes down the road from us. We've been going there for, you know, forever. Like, it'd be me probably asking that question because I'm very disoriented and never know where things are. But for him to say something like that was a big shock. And then his next question was, he goes, well, why would I take the coat to the dry cleaners? And I said, well, why do you think you take coats to the dry cleaners? Because it's dirty? I'm looking, thinking, what in the world? So things just got very, it was horrible. And after he finished that treatment, he did appear to sort of get a little bit better, but it was almost like, because of the memory loss, it's almost like somehow I thought he forgot that he had depression and anxiety and all this stuff. But as the memory did slowly start coming back, and as it came back, the depression and the anxiety also came back. And so not only did he suffer from depression, but he also had severe anxiety. He would wake up every morning, probably like at 5 in the morning. And I was working full-time. I hadn't worked full-time, but once he stopped working, I worked part-time, but I had to go back to work full-time, obviously, to help support the family. And so I'd wake up at 5 in the morning because I would hear the man beside me shaking and crying like a baby every single morning. And when I say shaking, I mean physically shaking. It was unbelievable. And I thought, how is it that nobody can help us? You know, and I'd be crying out to God every single day. And the last year got really, really bad, where not only did he have the depression and anxiety, but I know he was being tormented. And he would describe that he felt like he had these arrows shooting in his head saying, you're no good, you're a failure, you're worthless, you're never going to get better, your wife hates you, your kids hate you, you're a terrible father, you haven't been there for them. It was just, the voices were just unbearable. And he really couldn't take life anymore. And he just wanted it all to end because that was easier. And there were mornings when I would wake, or I would come home from school some days, and there would be things written on our bathroom mirror with soap. I'm not going to tell you what it said because it was disgusting. But it was not my husband. When I saw that, I knew in my heart. I thought, this is so evil. This is not my husband. Something has taken him over. Anyway, I just kept praying and believing, and I would text people on a daily basis, please pray for my husband, this is what's happening. And I was very open and very bare, and I really didn't care what people thought anymore. Because sometimes Satan too wants you to keep all that stuff private, because then he can keep you locked in all by yourself with no support system, and he wants you to feel ashamed. And I thought, I'm not going to feel shame over this, because I know that we're not the only family going through this. People aren't talking about it, but I know I'm not alone, because I know that there's people that commit suicide every day. And my husband believed the lie, however. He thought he was the only one. He would say to me, almost every day, tell me one person in our neighborhood that has depression. Name one man in this neighborhood that's not working. And this is a story that I had to listen to on a day in and a day out. And I try to encourage him and, tell him that that's just a lie, that there are people who have depression, and on and on. But anyways, getting to sort of last May, we had a good friend, and, interestingly, I really don't believe in coincidences anymore, because when I think back on our lives and all the things that have happened and the people that we have met, I think there's just no way that could have been a coincidence. And the one person that actually put me in touch with John, my husband and I met probably about 5 or 7 years prior to us even meeting John. My husband and I had gone to a seminar in Georgia for a week. I don't know if any of you have heard of Henry Wright. So we certainly did try everything. We also went to another thing in Florida called Hallelujah Acres, it was all about the whole leading. So, we tried everything under the sun. I haven't even told you a quarter of it, but so certainly we never gave up, and at least I had a willing husband. Whatever I told him we were going to try, he would try, so I'm thankful for that. But, so we had met Gloria in Georgia, and interestingly enough, she lived in Niagara Falls, not New York, but Niagara Falls, Ontario. And so, it was kind of cool that we were both from Ontario, and not only, Niagara Falls is only about an hour and a half away from Kitchener. So it was kind of interesting that, here we met, we were all from Canada, we were all excited, two Canadians here in the States. And so we kind of struck up a friendship, and after the conference was over, we stayed in touch with Gloria and her husband. Her husband wasn't there with her, but we met them afterwards, and we keep in touch. And I know she was praying for Rob all the time, and she would call him sometimes when I was at work. I'd phone her and say, Gloria, I got to get to work. I don't feel safe leaving him home alone. Can you give him a call? So she would call him and pray with him and encourage him. So, so she helped us along this journey. And so then last May, a year ago, but not in May, I think it was, January, February, something, her and her husband had gone to Florida. Sometimes they, go for a couple of months. They call us the snowbirds, right? So anyways, she was there, and I guess she met John. And when she came back, she phoned me and she said, Renata, I really feel that there's this man that you need to meet and talk to, She told me that he does deliverance. And in my head I thought, oh, we've been there, done that. Is this just going to be another one? But I was willing to try anything. And so I had phoned John and spoke to him, and I said, well, have you ever done deliverance on someone who has depression? Because I'm thinking, well, maybe he's done deliverance on other things, but maybe, he doesn't know how to deal with depression. So he assured me he had, and told me a little story about his brother. And I had asked him, I said, do you kind of ask people like 1,000 questions before you do deliverance on them? Because another thing we had done is when we had gone to different deliverance ministries, there's also another place in Kitchener, and I'm not going to name them. I mean, they're a great ministry, but a lot of these ministries, I find that they want to dig up your past and your history, and my husband has done that. You don't know how many times he has listed, all of the bad things he's done, and asked for forgiveness 50 times, and written his whole history, and, it was a whole day thing on just that kind of stuff, and then they would do deliverance at the end for 10 minutes, and he never got any deliverance out of it. So I know that had I said to him, well, you're going to have to kind of answer this 50-page questionnaire again before he can do deliverance on you, I think he would have just told me to go fly a kite, because there's no way he's doing that again. So it was just very refreshing for John to say that, no, we didn't have to do that. He was just going to straight out do deliverance. So I told my husband this, so he was willing to go with it. And I said to John, well, how's this going to work? We live in Canada, you're in Florida, do I need to fly him out there? What do we need to do? And he said, no, we can just, do it on Skype. So I thought, oh boy, on Skype, okay, now we're going to do it through the airwaves. What's that going to look like? So I had a little bit of doubt in myself there, but I thought, well, okay. He told me that he had prayed for someone over the phone, and that, they were delivered. So I thought, well, surely Skype is even better because he'll see our faces. My husband and I kind of went into our room. We shut the door, got onto Skype, and John started praying over my husband. And as I said, he didn't really ask many questions. He just started casting things out. And I was also quite impressed that he had some discernment. He had asked my husband some questions, whether he had ever suffered from headaches, which I just shared with you that he had, and for migraines, and John seemed to know that, and also if he had any stomach issues, which he's had stomach issues kind of for years. So that was just kind of all confirmation for me that, I was kind of feeling really good about the whole thing. And John said my husband's situation was a little bit different because he didn't have any kind of crazy manifestations. He actually just kept yawning and yawning and yawning and yawning and yawning some more. Where I kept staring at him thinking, what is this man doing? He never yawns, but yet he can't stop yawning. But inside I was so excited because I knew something was happening. I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt. And so that specific day, actually, my husband was terrible. I mean, if you looked him in the eye, you could tell. Like, people look at him today, and everyone that sees him says, wow, you look great. You look terrific. And I'm thinking, why are people saying this to him all the time but not to me? And then I think maybe they just remember what he looked like for the last 10 years, and they really do see how fabulous he looks now, because he really did look like there was nothing in him. There was just no life there. And so anyways, John prayed with him for about an hour, and I could immediately see that there was a change in him. We walked down into the kitchen afterwards, and he had actually been invited to go to a little gathering. Somebody was moving to Germany, so he wasn't going to go because he had stopped all social activity. And just so you know, my husband is extremely, extremely social. Extremely social. He has a huge networking of people. I mean, that's where he's gifted. But the enemy really, really shut that down and really tried to pull that away from him. He would be uncomfortable talking to someone, and I'd be like, what? Because he would go up to a stranger anywhere, anytime, and talk to anybody. One of the staff members that he had hired, he met at Starbucks and ended up hiring them to work for him. And he would talk to any one of you in here, and you would become his best friend. And he's very, very good at calling people all the time. He's great at keeping in touch. That's his gift. But anyway, all of that had really died, and I really missed that in him. And so as soon as he came down, I could tell that there was a bit of a difference in him. And he said that he was going to go out to that, this gathering. So he went. So anyway, John had just said, see how things go, and get back to me. So we kind of waited for, oh, and by the way, I'm also very thankful that John was open to working with us, because he had said he really doesn't do that one-on-one anymore. And so we were very desperate, and I think Lori had asked him a few times before he kind of caved and said sure he would, you know. So we're so thankful for that. Had he not, we'd still be where we were, I'm sure. So about a week later, John ended up connecting with my husband again and prayed with him again. And then he did a third time. I think it was about 45 minutes the next couple of times. And each time we noticed a bit of a difference. And after, so it wasn't instantaneous. And that's why, you know, John would maybe say here, just because you have deliverance done today, you don't necessarily feel anything, don't be discouraged that nothing will happen. So after that third time, so maybe 3 weeks, my husband woke up one morning, and this is his usual. He loves coffee. He's a coffee connoisseur, and I don't drink coffee, if you can imagine. So every morning he walks down to have his coffee, but as he's walking, as soon as he pops out of bed, not even gets out of bed, as I said, he starts to cry. He's bawling. So one morning he wakes up and he's walking downstairs, and, you know, I know this because I've heard him tell the story, but as he's coming down the steps, because I'd still be in bed sleeping, I'm not a 5 in the morning person, he noticed that he's not crying. So he's a bit freaked out. He's walking downstairs and he's like, huh, I'm not crying. This is interesting. And then day 2 comes along and he walks down the steps again and he's like, okay, I'm not crying again. Oh, this is really weird. Day 3 comes along and he said he actually felt like he was an alcoholic, counting the days that he hasn't had a drink, but counting the days that he hasn't cried. So anyway, it ended up being day 3, day 4, day 5. We're now over a year that he hasn't cried. So, you know, praise God for that. It's been an incredible journey.
Visit johngeorgeministries.com for service times, travel itineraries, teachings, testimonies, and future updates. God bless you.